Ranging from essentially $30,000 to $42,000, Nissan's Pathfinder is one of the better values in this large three-row crossover segment. The Nissan Pathfinder is also one of the biggest three-row crossovers available. If you're looking for the most room in your three-row crossover, especially out back, then you're going to be looking at the Pathfinder, the Chevy Traverse, the GMC Acadia, or the Buick Enclave. Nissan styled the front end of the Pathfinder after their pickup truck line. It does look like one of the bolder entries in this segment. We'd have optional fog lights, but the big thing you'll notice about this Pathfinder versus previous generations is that ground clearance is significantly lower. For 2015, Nissan has canceled the hybrid version of the Pathfinder, leaving only the related QX60 hybrid available in this particular form factor. This is essentially the same V6 engine you'll find in a wide variety of Nissan products. It's 3.5 liters, produces 260 horsepower and 240 pound-feet of torque. Of course, because this is a Nissan, it is mated to a continuously variable transmission, sending power right here to the front wheels or to all four with an optional $1,690 all-wheel drive system. Although the engine is probably familiar to you, the transmission is very different than the rest of Nissan's CVTs out there, including that new Murano, because this CVT does not use a steel belt. It actually uses a steel chain, and that gives us that high 5,000-pound towing capacity in the Pathfinder. The all-wheel drive system in this vehicle is also a little bit of a twist because you can control the clutch pack manually via a knob in the center of the console, and under certain speeds it will completely lock up that clutch pack, giving it a little bit more of an off-road ability than you'll find in the average three-row crossover. In terms of overall size, the Pathfinder slots right in between the Highlander and the Traverse and Acadia. This is about 6 inches shorter than the Chevy and the GMC, but it's about 6 inches longer than the Toyota. Now, the big difference between this and the General Motors triplet SUVs is right back here in the cargo area, because GM gives you most of that additional increase in room right back here, not in the third row seat. Taking a real-world look at this cargo area, you can see that we can fit a 24-inch roller bag in this cargo well right here below the storage area. Now, with that storage area in place right like that, I can fit a 24-inch roller bag and a 26-inch roller bag right here across the back and still put this third row right into place. This does mean that we get an awful lot more practical storage right back here than you'll find in the Toyota Highlander or Kia Sorento or any of the smaller three-row crossovers out there. None of that is too surprising, but what may surprise you is we have exactly the same kind of cargo room back here and almost the same kind of rear passenger room as you get in the Chevy Tahoe. The Pathfinder's interior is very different from the Nissan Rogue or the Nissan Murano, the other two SUVs in Nissan's American lineup. It's most noticeable right here in the center stack. This does use sort of Nissan's older center stack design, which they shared with the last generation Nissan Maxima and a variety of Infiniti products. Same thing goes for the infotainment software. It's basically shared with those older Infiniti products. This is the same 4-spoke Nissan steering wheel you'll find in a wide variety of Nissan products. We have a center channel speaker there because we have the up-level Bose sound system in our vehicle. Now, all the plastics in this dashboard are hard plastics. Even though this is a two-tone dashboard, this is a single injection molded hard plastic piece. At this time, this amount of hard plastic is a little bit unusual in this segment. Most entries do have soft touch plastics in this sort of mid-level area of the dashboard and down the center console. This is all hard touch plastic in our particular model. Comfortable seating really is what the Pathfinder is all about. On the passenger side, this is very comfortable, although it doesn't have the same range of motion as the driver's side. Second row seats slide forward and backward, allowing you to apportion the legroom between the first, second, and third rows. Second row seats also recline. This is the most reclined position. Reclines in a decent angle, actually. It's nice and low on the seat back so it doesn't feel too weird. You can tell that the Pathfinder was designed for second and third row passengers so that they didn't really feel like second and third class citizens. We have height adjustable seat belts for both the second row passengers as well as the first row passengers. We get cup holders in the back. We actually get 2 on either side of this third row. And the third row has an awful lot of room. Now, it's not as comfortable as some of them out there, most notably the minivan third rows, but this is probably the most comfortable 3-row crossover seat you can buy. If I sit very upright in this rear seat, I have 1.5 inches of headroom, and that's a huge deal because most of these 3-row crossovers have very compact rear seats. If I slide this second row seat back to the position that I had it in comfortably, I still have about 3 inches of legroom left there. The rear bench seat folds in a 50-50 folding fashion. That means that you can fold one side down, fit a large amount of luggage right back here, obviously next to the person that is sitting on the other half of this seat, and still carry 6 people on a trip. That means that you can put 6 people's worth of luggage and 6 people in the Pathfinder. That's a little bit tricky in something like the Toyota Highlander because the Highlander requires that 3-across rear bench seat in order to do that, and if you fold it, then you actually lose the center seat. Out on the road, the Pathfinder feels big and heavy, but interestingly enough, this is one of the lighter, large three-row crossovers available. This is significantly lighter than General Motors' Traverse, Acadia, or Enclave. It's very noticeable when you take a look at the acceleration and the braking scores. Braking came in at around 125 feet, which is very short for this category of SUV. It actually is even shorter than something like a Toyota Highlander. That light curb weight also helps out acceleration. 0 to 60 came in at 7.1 seconds, which is among the faster entries in this segment as long as you're not talking about the sporty entries. So if the Pathfinder isn't really heavy, what is making the Pathfinder feel large and heavy out on the road? Well, it's primarily down to the suspension tuning as well as the steering. The Pathfinder steering is light, there's not a whole lot of feedback coming back from the front wheels. That's not very surprising, of course, in this era of electric power steering, but this is a little bit more numb than the rest of the competition. In addition to that, we have a suspension design that is tuned towards the softer side of this segment. Now, in terms of road holding, this actually holds the road just about as well as a Mazda CX-9, but the feeling is totally different. Now, in terms of absolute handling, the Dodge Durango is far and away the best entry in this segment thanks to its excellent weight balance. It is just about 50-50 if you get the V6 in that Durango, a little bit more than that if you get the V8. This transmission tends to favor upshifting very rapidly, so it changes its ratio to a high ratio as quickly as possible. And that tends to make the car feel a little bit more sluggish. Some of that also probably has to do with the way that this accelerator pedal is mapped. My 7.10 to 60 time was taken when the vehicle was in the L mode because it doesn't imitate a stepped automatic transmission when it's in the L mode. And it actually is 0.2 of a second faster than when the vehicle is in D and it's trying to imitate a traditional automatic. Nissan certainly spends a lot of time marketing the Pathfinder's 5,000-pound towing capacity, but towing with a CVT is very unusual. The feel is definitely different than a traditional stepped automatic. This transmission constantly changes its ratios, whether you're towing or whether you're not, and that is a little bit unusual. Well, I'm sure you would get used to that feeling. It may take some time. On the flip side of things, however, you get the same benefits that CVTs give you in terms of fuel economy and acceleration and hill climbing performance when you're towing a trailer. When you're out on gravel roads like this, or even snow and ice, the locking ability of this center coupling is kind of handy because it makes the Pathfinder feel a little bit more sure-footed than the other options in this segment that don't allow you to choose that option. Well, there are definitely some downsides to the soft suspension tuning on-road. When it comes to off-road or dirt road or soft road handling, this is really where you want a soft suspension like this because this soaks up the bumps and the ruts on this gravel road much better than most of the other entries in this segment, especially things like the Toyota Highlander, which actually has a fairly firm suspension in its latest generation for an SUV or a crossover. I know it may sound like an oxymoron, but third row comfort really is the prime reason to get the Pathfinder. We have considerably more room back here than you'll find in any of the other entries in this segment, and we have more combined legroom. That's the important figure to keep in mind, and that's third row plus second row plus first row than any of the other entries in this segment. It's really noticeable when you take a look at other entries like the Chevy Traverse, because some of the legroom figures will be a little bit higher than this, but the combination of all three legroom figures is actually higher in the Pathfinder. That means that it's possible to fit a 6-foot person in the third row, a 6-foot person in the second row, and a 6-foot person driving the vehicle in relative comfort. Obviously, comfort does go down as you go to the rear, so the third row is going to be the least comfortable spot in this vehicle, but again, it's more comfortable than anybody else's. That's really the difference between this and the Toyota Highlander. Toyota decided to fit 3 seats across that rear bench seat, not just 2, and that makes that third row an awful lot more cramped than we find in this vehicle. On the flip side, Toyota does offer you much more comfortable second row bucket seats, but that's a trade-off you're going to need to decide on. The Pilot for 2016 is expected to grow, and it does have what looks like a much nicer interior than this vehicle, but you don't get as much room on the inside, and of course you will pay for that extra refinement. Dodge's Durango is far and away the best handling 3-row mass market crossover. That's because it's largely related to the Mercedes-Benz ML, which also handles very well. The Durango is also the only perfectly balanced rear-wheel drive entry in this particular segment. But unlike previous Durangos, it's not a true box-on-frame design like the Chevy Tahoe or the Chevy Suburban. It actually is a crossover vehicle that happens to be rear-wheel drive. The Durango's excellent balance and excellent driving dynamics are even obvious in the base form, and we get a V6 and a V8 engine under the hood. Now, on the downside, the Durango doesn't have quite as much room on the inside. There are certain sacrifices for having that drivetrain layout. The most obvious is, of course, the exterior to the interior ratio. We get more hood on the Durango because you have to be able to fit a V8 engine in there, and we don't have as much room on the inside as we get in the Pathfinder. Depending on the version of the Durango you get, it may be a little bit more off-road capable than this, but it is still a crossover vehicle, so it's not going to be able to do things that the Jeep Grand Cherokee could do, for instance, even though they are relatively closely related. The Durango doesn't get all the off-road bits that the Grand Cherokee gets, so the suspension is lower. We don't get the same kind of transfer cases in the middle either. I think the Pathfinder does best in terms of value right around the $39,000 mark, like we're taking a look at here, with navigation, the up-level sound system, with or without the panoramic sunroof, but definitely with leather. When you compare that with the rest of the competition, it's at least $1,500 less expensive when you similarly equip them. However, I think the best value in this segment actually is the Infiniti QX60, and I would buy it before I bought the Pathfinder. The QX60 uses the same engine as the Pathfinder, but there are some slight differences in the drivetrain overall, so we don't get the same towing capacity in the Infiniti as we do in the Nissan. But overall, the interior is definitely a notch higher. I think the exterior is also a little bit more attractive, and you get a longer warranty in that Infiniti. The longer warranty alone drops the actual price difference between the two by at least $1,000. So you're looking at only a $2,000 bump to get the nicer interior and better interior trappings. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. Again, I'm Alex Dykes with thetruthaboutcars.com. Go ahead and click the subscribe banner at the top of your screen and you'll be updated on all of our latest videos. You can also find us over at thetruthaboutcars.com for the latest news, reviews, and more. You can also find us over at facebook.com. I'll see you next week.